everybody, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today I am sharing one of the first designs that I ever made when I opened my Etsy shop about 7 years ago. This is actually the first thing that I posted when I opened my store. So it's pretty exciting for me to share this. I've never shared it before as a tutorial. So today we're going to make a quilled apple.
Yummy!
First, you are going to want to gather supplies. I do have another hand-drawn template on my website, and I will post a link to that down below. Besides the printout, you're going to need to choose the colors of your apple. This time I'm going with a green apple, so this is a soft green quilling strips. I also have that last one was from Craft Harbor. I also have their ivory, and then I have some old chocolate brown, which you can pick up from Craft Harbor, but any dark brown will do. I'm going to be using a needle tool for this one. This is a double-sided. I don't use very often, so I thought I'd give it a try for part of this. Tweezers will be helpful, a small paintbrush to get rid of glue. You're going to need some pins. Always have white glue in a needle nose container. I'm doing two different kinds of scissors here. I just use the big ones for cutting out the template, but the little ones will be for paper, a ruler, some wax paper, and your work board. First off, I'm going to cut this template in half. I only need one apple at a time because I'm just going to be making one today. So set that aside. Luckily, that happens to fit my work board pretty much exactly, so I'm not going to trim that down. And then wax paper over top, pinned in the corners. Remember, we're using wax paper over our template because we can see what we're working with, but also your quilling won't stick to the wax paper later. So I get that all worked out, then I have a wrinkle, so I'm going to smooth that out again, and then that is ready to go. So when we start doing the apple, we're going to start with this outer two sections here first. This is going to be what's going to end up as the peel of the apple. And I drew it in two different parts just because it just makes sense when you see what shapes you're using, it's going to make sense that that little line is there separating the two. So, and it's mostly made up of two different shapes. We're going to be making teardrops, and we're also going to be doing coils. Now, I'm not going to be showing every single one here, but I will include in the description box a link to the blog post about this, where I'm going to have a little diagram that has every single shape and every single measurement. I'm just, for time's sake, and just to make it easier, I'm only showing two. So first thing I did is I ripped off 4 inches of that soft green quilling paper. I'm going to let that open a little bit. And then I'm going to glue the tail down because this is going to be pinched into a teardrop. So a little bit of glue. And then get that onto your coil. A little trick, I like to use the side of my needle tool just to make sure it's really down. And then just pinch one side. And I'm going to actually do a slight curve on this because you can see there the end is a little bit curved. So this is a curved teardrop. Bend that one side, and that's going to be right about there. And then, like I said, we're only using two different shapes for the entirety of this apple peel. So the next part is going to be just a straight coil. And so I'm going to use 6 inches for that part. So rip that off. I'm going to use my needle tool and roll that all the way down, start to finish. If you want to use a slotted quilling tool for this project, that's totally fine. It's not going to really make a difference. I'll link also to the post I just did, or the video I just did, about which tool you really need, slotted or a needle tool, so you can see my thoughts on both of those. So anyway, we're going to, like I said, make just a regular coil out of this. So we just glue the tail down, and that's all there is to that piece. And then that is going to be the second one in the row, lined right up against, lined right up against the curved teardrop that we just made. Now I've already, sticking to my fingers, I already made the rest of the shapes for this entire green section. So I'm just going to start gluing them all into place and pinning them. But again, I'll have all the dimensions and all of the shapes. Everything you need is going to be in the linked blog post down in the description box for the entire rest of this green section. So I put a little glue between each shape, and then I do like to pin these in place just to make sure everything stays where I want it to while I'm adding the rest. So I also wanted to slow down again. I wanted to mention how earlier I said that I split this peel part into two different sections. And the reason is because you can see there I added 2 teardrops right on top of each other, just so you can see where they meet up. One teardrop goes one way, one goes the other, the one I'm pinning right now. And that's why they're in 2 different, I cut that shape into 2 different pieces, just so you could see where those pieces line up on top of each other. So just for that last section, I have 3 different teardrops, and one is teeny tiny, and it's going to go right in the middle, and then that is the end for the green section. Next, what we're going to do is put an outline around this entire green part of the apple peel. It's going to make it look nice and finished, and it's going to just add a little bit extra detail. So again, starting with a torn edge, because you know I like my torn edges, makes everything real smooth. Try to find a place that's out of the way, a little discreet. This way it won't be too obvious where everything starts and stops. So I'm going to add my torn piece here to the bottom inside area of the peel, give it a little smoothing over with my needle tool, let that sit for a second, and then I'm going to start wrapping the rest of that green strip around the outside of the green peel. And to make sure that it stays, I'm going to put a dot of glue along the edge of every green shape that's along the outside. So you can see there, just a little dot of glue. And then I just take the strip and wrap it gently. What I don't want to have happen is for that green strip to go in and out of every curl. I want it just to lay on the edge of the outside. So you can see there, it between all the coils, it didn't the green strip didn't go in and out to exactly match the outside, because apples aren't bumpy on the outside. If I did that, it would just go bump, bump, bump all the way around the peel, and that's not how apples look. They are smooth on the outside. So just a dot of glue right on the edge of every coil and shape so that that outside strip stays nice and smooth. If you want to put a pin here and there, you can do that. You just don't want to make it too tight. So again, it makes that outside wavy or bumpy. So I'm going to get to the end, add a little bit of glue, and then continue wrapping around the other side of the green. And a hint, when you get to a corner piece like that, if you sort of pinch it, it makes it easier to go around pointy edges. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. A little bit of dab of glue on every single curl or shape, and then continue placing that green strip along there. As you can see, I did the exact same process all the way around both sides of the green peel. And then when I get to where I started, I want to make sure I tear off any excess and just add some glue to finish up that whole line. And now we're moving on to the ivory part of the apple. And for this entire part, all of these ivory strips I made by doubling up my quilling strips. And I've gone over this a bunch of times. I explained it in depth in an edging video, which I'm going to link here and also in the description box. But just bear in mind that every ivory strip I'm using here is a double thick ivory strip. You want them real strong for all of these parts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the two halves of the apple in ivory around the entire length of both sections of the apple. So first thing I did is I softened up the ivory strip by running it through my fingernails a couple times just to make it a little bit easier to get into the curves. And in a similar process in what I just did with the green strips, I'm going to be using a combination of glue and pins first to get right up against that green strip. I might seem silly to do both the green and the white back to back instead of, say, just using the ivory and not doing the green on the inside, but I promise it will make your apple look a lot more finished if you take the time to wrap both the green coil and then do the ivory part. It's going to look a lot better than just doing one. So after I put some glue on that inside green strip, I'm going to get the ivory all set up and lined up there so it fits just alongside. And this is making it look a lot more difficult than this process is, just because I'm trying to do it on camera, hardly being able to see what I'm actually working on with my hands, but I promise it's really not difficult at all. A little bit of glue on right alongside the green, and then use some pins to keep that ivory steady. And then we're going to keep going around this entire little kidney bean looking section here. And then we're going to do the other one. If you need any tips about doing this on edge quilling once you get through with the green part, you're going to want to again refer to the video that I made about doing the on edge quilling. I'd like to do little dots of glue and then some pins to keep everything straight. I'm just going to go right around the outline of this apple half. case you missed it, I did tear off whatever excess I was going to have and then added some glue to the end and got everything in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other half of that ivory apple section. I left this part in here because I wanted to show what happens if you make a little bit of a mistake. You can see there, after I brushed away my excess glue, I noticed that there was sort of a big space between the template line and where my ivory strip was going there. Because I caught it right away and it hadn't dried yet, I'm able to use my tweezers, pull everything back, gently peel the strip away. Remember, it's been glued at the bottom, so it was totally done, and reposition and get that all straightened out again. So sometimes things happen. Double check before you let everything dry for real. Sometimes you can fix your mistakes with quilling without having to pull that part out and start all over again. When both parts of that ivory section of your apple is all pinned into place, don't forget to use your little paintbrush to get rid of any glue that you can see. Once your outline of your ivory has dried, you can go ahead and remove all of those pins. Wouldn't hurt to leave some pins in the green section just to make sure nothing shifts too bad on you, but everything should stay in place for the most part. What we're going to do now is, using again double strips of the ivory, going to be making straight lines all the way down the sections of the ivory to make it look like it's a solid piece of fruit. So this is just going to be sort of an optical illusion. We're not going to completely fill in the ivory sections of the fruit. We're going to be leaving about 1/8 of an inch gap between each straight line, and you'll see what I mean as I get started here. So first thing I do is measure the distance that I think I'm going to need with my fingers and then tear that. I'm going to use some tweezers here, make sure that bit is nice and straight, and after I measure it with my finger and I tear it, I slide it in with my tweezers to see if it fits all the way across. Now, I've been doing this same technique for years, so I've gotten pretty good at measuring with my fingers. Don't worry if you need to make some trims or you feel like you're wasting bits. If something's too small, save it for the rest of the apple because you might need it. The smaller bits go towards the bottom. So I added a little bit of glue with my needle nose bottle to both ends of that strip, and then I'm going to go on to the next one. So I line it up about 1/8 of an inch down, measure it with my fingers, tear off any extra, add some glue, and then slide it into place. If you find it helpful to add some pins to keep your strips straight, you're welcome to do that. You can see this one, I had one on either side and it did shift a little bit, so I just add another pin and just get it straight. And then you're going to keep going all the way down 1/2 of the fruit. When you have one side all filled in, you're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other half of the apple. Now the tricky part here is making sure that all the lines are straight across. You're going to imagine that everything is one straight line from one half of the apple to the other. And if it's helpful, I used to do this when I first started with this template, is I would draw with a ruler lines going straight across right on my template. I would draw lines going from one side to the other so that I would know that all my lines of my quilling paper were going to line up. And that was really helpful. So in this part, you can see I'm trying to, that one was too small, so I'm going to do it again. It happens. Quilling paper is cheap. Not a big deal. Save that piece. Maybe you'll need it down the road. Try again. Line it up. That one, of course, a little too long this time. And so I'm going to trim that. And then once I get it right to the right size, I will use my tweezers. Again, double check, make sure it fits. And add a little bit of glue to each end. You can see there what I'm talking about. One line straight across both sides of the apple. Once you have both sides of your apple filled in, it should look something like this. Don't worry too much if your lines are a tiny bit closer together or a little bit further apart, but we're aiming for something in the area of this. So next we're going to work on the seeds of your apple, because when you cut an apple in half, you can see the seeds. That's where the chocolate brown comes in. You could use black for this as well if you'd prefer. And what you're going to need is 3 strips, each one being about 2 inches long. So I couldn't find my ruler when I was doing this part, so I'm sort of eyeballing it here, but somewhere around 2 inches. And different needle tool, but you get the picture. Roll it up into a coil, like so. Glue the end. There we are. And then you're going to get that to stick, and then give it a little pinch. Bing. That is your very simple apple seed. And like I said, we're going to make 3 of those. And once you have 3, you have to make sure you're gluing these in a very specific way, because eventually you're going to be taking this apple off of this wax paper. If you just left those apple seeds floating in space, they would not be stuck to the apple. So the first one, we're going to glue to one side. You can see there, right on one side. And then for the second seed, you're actually going to glue that to the first seed, just down a little bit. Not right next to it, just down a tiny ways. Again, tweezers are super helpful here because these are tiny little seeds in a tight space. Then for your last seed, you're actually going to want to glue that to the other half of the open space of the apple. So 2 are going to be stuck to one side, and then 1 is going to be stuck on the other side. And it's okay if they don't match up exactly to the template. It will all work out in the end. And we are on the very last step of this apple. We're going to make the stem. So we have about 2.5 inches of that same chocolate brown quilling paper. And I've shown this before, and we're going to do the same thing to make a stem. We are going to roll that strip about 2/3 of the way down, curl the end, so it's going to look like a number 9, and then a little bit of glue between the curl and the rest of the strip there. You want to use your tweezers as a little clamp to hold this together for a minute. Always a good idea. There you can see I just slide my tweezer right into the middle of the coil, and that's a good view of that number 9 shape I just mentioned. So after that sets for a second, we're going to glue another piece of the chocolate brown so that it connects on the other side from the coil down to the bottom of the stem. So you're looking for something that looks like that, and measure it with your fingers and go ahead and curl it a bit. A needle tool also works good for something like this, sort of think like you're curling a ribbon on a package. And then I'm going to add a dot of glue to one side of the coil and one side of the bottom of that stem piece. And then got a little bit slippery here, but we're going to try to attach that last piece so it ends up looking like a 3-dimensional stem shape. And when you have the shape you like, you're just going to add a dot of glue to the center of your apple. Try to get it, I find one side tends to work the best. And then I'm just going to slide that little stem piece right in there. And that's going to be it. You're going to wait for everything to dry and take out your pins, and you'll be able to get your apple off of your work board. And if you have missed this before, a really easy way to get your quilling off of wax paper is to use a needle tool and just kind of rub it around between your quilling and your wax paper. It should loosen all the glue and your piece should come off. Don't want to be too rough, but I like to go at it from different angles, and eventually it just pops right off. Now, if you have any extra little glue blits that you can see, I like to take my very small scissors and just sort of snip them. It doesn't have to be perfect from the underside. I usually just get the ones that are really pretty obvious because they can be visible after you mount this or put it on a card, do whatever you like with it, but get those out of the way. And you can do these in different colors. Here is one I made with a deep red I don't think it's apron. I think it's a crimson quilling paper, and that is always an option. And I just wanted to show what I used to do. I used to just sell these individually, and I would mount them by putting some glue on the back, and then I would put it right in the center of a 5x7 piece of mat board so that that could easily be framed later. You could put more than one if you have a bigger piece. I probably wouldn't put two on this size, but I just wanted to show together. That looks a little sweet, very fall, but just some different ways you can do these. Again, they would go on a card, whatever you think is best. So I hope that you find this as exciting as I did. I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like I said, I've never shared it before. I've never shared anything that I've actually sold in my shop before, but because my store is no longer open, I figured why not share some of those designs because they're some of my favorites. So hope you enjoy the quilled apple. Leave any comments or questions down below. Don't forget to hit a like and a subscribe so you can find out when we're making our next video. And we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Yummy apples.
Crunchy.